Welcome to the quiet part of the internet. You've wandered somewhere few people come on purpose. Somewhere stories don't just entertain, they linger. Tonight's theme, the woods. Not the kind you hike through, but the kind that seem to breathe when the wind stops. We've gathered 7 true accounts of what people have found out there. Things half buried, half forgotten and completely wrong. From objects that shouldn't exist, to discoveries that stared back when uncovered. These aren't campfire tales. They're the kind of stories the forest keeps until someone like you decides to listen. And when you do, it never really lets you go. Most people who stumble onto this channel forget to subscribe. They watch in silence, then try to forget what they've heard. You won't though. You found this place for a reason. So tell me, what time is it where you are? And where are you watching from tonight? Drop it in the comments below. Let's see who's still awake when the last story ends. Now, let's begin. The air smelled wrong that morning. I couldn't explain it, like rain on hot metal or something burnt deep underground. The woods always had their usual scent, pine, mud, and decay. But that day it felt heavier, like the whole forest had exhaled something it shouldn't have. I was 2 days into a solo hiking trip in the Smokies. I'd camped here a dozen times before, always taking the same trail down to the river. I knew the bends, the fallen log at mile marker 5, even the rusted can nailed to a tree that locals used as a joke mailbox. Everything was familiar, until it wasn't. It started when the trail curved in a way I didn't recognize. Just a few feet at first, like maybe I'd stepped off the main path. The ground dipped differently and the trees they were too close together. Their trunks leaned in toward each other like they were trying to whisper. I stopped, adjusted my pack, and looked around. No footprints except mine, no wind. Just this low hum, almost like distant machinery. I told myself it was nothing. Maybe a stream echoing through the hills. Still, I turned around and tried to retrace my steps. But when I looked back, the path behind me didn't look like a path anymore. Just brush and ferns closing in like I'd never walked there at all. That's when I saw it. A cabin. It was maybe 50 yards ahead, tucked between the trees. I froze because it shouldn't have been there. I'd hiked this exact spot countless times. It was all open woods and undergrowth. No structures, no ruins, nothing. The cabin looked old but not abandoned. The roof sagged slightly, shingles missing, but the porch had clean boards. No moss, no rot. The door was shut. There was smoke rising from a metal chimney that looked newer than the rest of it. I remember standing there for a full minute, my brain trying to make it make sense. Maybe park rangers built it recently? Maybe it was private property, though that made no sense either. This land was federal, deep off trail. Still, I felt this strange pull. Like if I turned away it would vanish and I'd never know if it was really there. So I stepped closer. The closer I got, the colder it felt. The air around it was different. No birdsong, no buzzing insects. Even the smell changed. It was like walking from summer into winter. I could see my breath fogging slightly, though the day had been warm. The hum I'd heard earlier was louder now. It came from the ground, a low vibration, steady and rhythmic like a buried generator. I reached the porch. The boards creaked under my boots. A carved wooden chair sat in the corner facing the trees. On the seat was something wrapped in cloth, soaked dark like it had been left out in the rain. I didn't touch it, I just stared at the door. It was heavy oak with a rusted latch and a small window near the top, the glass cloudy from age. I leaned in, trying to see inside. Nothing but darkness, and then a thud from inside. Just once I stumbled back, heart hammering. It sounded like something heavy had dropped to the floor. Not an animal, not wind, deliberate. I waited, holding my breath. Another thud, then a dragging sound. Someone was in there. I should have left. I knew I should have. Every instinct told me to get off that porch and run until my lungs gave out. But something kept me frozen. Not curiosity, not courage, just this sick heaviness in my gut. The dragging stopped. Silence. Then, 3 slow knocks on the other side of the door. Not random. Not frantic. 3 measured, even knocks. I whispered, "Hello?" No answer. But I heard something else, a faint creak above me. The sound of a footstep. On the roof, I didn't look up. I couldn't. I just turned and bolted back into the trees, branches whipping my face, my backpack thudding against me. I didn't stop until I saw my own campfire smoke in the distance, flickering like a signal. When I looked back one last time, the woods were still. The cabin wasn't there anymore. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I shut my eyes, I heard that sound again. The dragging, the knocks, the slow creak above me. I'd built my camp maybe half a mile from where I'd seen the cabin, but it felt like it was standing right outside the tent. The forest never felt that quiet before. Even the crickets had stopped. I kept telling myself I'd imagined it. Maybe I'd gotten turned around. Maybe the light played tricks on me. Maybe it was just some hunter's shed I'd mistaken for something else. I told myself all of that over and over, but it didn't help. What really messed me up was the smell. That same cold metal burnt earth smell was back, drifting faintly through the nylon of my tent like smoke. By morning, I'd made a decision I still regret. I had to go back. It sounds stupid, I know. But when something impossible happens, your brain can't just let it go. I needed proof that it wasn't real. A photo, footprints, anything. Something that would make sense again. The woods looked normal when I packed up. Sunlight cutting through the trees, dew on the grass, birds chirping again. For a second, I almost convinced myself I'd dreamed it all. But when I reached the spot, everything changed. The trail was the same. Same ferns, same fallen log. Except for one thing. The ground was torn up like something heavy had been dragged through the dirt. It led straight toward the clearing where the cabin had stood. And there it was. I froze, because this time it didn't look the same. The cabin was older, like decades older. The wood was gray and flaking, the chimney gone, the porch half collapsed. No smoke, no hum, no sign of life. I stepped closer, my boots crunching over dead leaves. The door hung crooked on one hinge, wide open now. I could see inside. A single room, shadows crawling up the walls from the sunlight through the roof holes. "Hello?" I called out, but my voice came out thin. Nothing. The air inside smelled awful, damp rot and something sweet like fruit gone bad. I covered my nose and stepped in. The floor creaked under my weight, dust swirling in the light. There wasn't much inside. A broken chair, a rusty stove, an old metal bed frame. On the far wall, someone had carved words into the wood. I wiped the dust off with my sleeve and read them. "Stay out of the trees after dark." My throat tightened. The letters were deep. Not knife scratches, but gouged like whoever did it wanted to make sure it stayed. That's when I noticed something else. On the floor beside the bed frame was a boot print. Fresh. Same tread as mine, but it wasn't mine. Because it pointed the wrong way, toward the wall. I backed up fast, hitting the door frame. My skin felt electric, like static crawling over me. The air shifted, colder again. I swear I heard the faint hum start up from under the floorboards. The same rhythm I'd heard yesterday. I turned to leave, but something caught my eye. On the porch railing, carved into the wood, were 3 deep grooves. Fresh ones. As if someone, or something, had clawed into it recently. I started running again, following my mental map of the trail, desperate to see sunlight through the trees. But the forest looked wrong. Every direction looked the same tree shapes repeating like a copy-paste glitch in reality. I stopped, panting, spinning in circles, my phone's GPS blinking uselessly. Then I heard it. A slow creak. The sound of a door opening. I turned toward it. The cabin was right behind me again, closer. The door that had been hanging open was now shut, and this time, there was something new on the porch. A backpack. My backpack. The one I'd left at my camp. I couldn't breathe. My pulse roared in my ears. Then the latch on the cabin door started to move. Slowly. Click, click, click. I ran. I didn't stop this time. I don't even remember the next hour. Just crashing through brush, scraping my legs until I hit a stream I recognized. I followed it until I found the trailhead and stumbled back to my car, shaking so hard I dropped the keys twice. When I looked back before driving off, there was nothing but trees. No clearing, no path, no cabin. But when I got home later that night and unpacked my gear, my phone had new photos in it. 7 of them, all of the same cabin, taken from inside. When I say I almost threw my phone across the room, I'm not exaggerating. The photos were just there in my camera roll, time-stamped from that morning. The same hours I'd been running for my life. At first I thought maybe I'd brushed my phone against something in my pack, maybe the motion sensor had gone off. But the first picture stopped me cold. It showed the inside of the cabin. The walls, the broken chair, the same carved warning, except the lighting was off. My flashlight beam cut through the dark in a perfect circle, right in the center of the frame, meaning I'd been holding the phone. I swear to you, I never took that picture. The next one was blurrier, closer to the bed frame, angled toward the wall where that message was gouged. You could see something faint in the corner, though. A shadow, like someone standing half in view. Shoulder, maybe the edge of a face. I zoomed in until the pixels broke apart. It wasn't mine. I was alone. My heart started racing again, the same as it had in the woods. I felt that cold weight in my stomach, the one that tells you you're not imagining it, that something's been behind you longer than you realized. The third picture was worse. It was pointed at the open door, sunlight spilling in. But there was a figure, tall, standing just outside, head tilted down like they were watching something on the floor. I couldn't see their face, but their clothes looked wrong, pale, threadbare, like fabric that had been underwater too long. I kept scrolling, fingers shaking. Each picture was closer to the doorway, like someone had walked out slowly, one photo at a time. The last two were of the woods, empty, just trees, but if you looked carefully, the same cabin window was reflected in the corner of the frame, like the photographer was still inside. The final one didn't make sense. It was pitch black except for one thing, a handprint pressed against glass. My phone's flash had caught the detail, every crease, every fingerprint, and the hand was on my side of the lens. I couldn't sleep after that. I sat there on the couch, lights on, every sound from the street making me jump. At some point I realized I'd been staring at that last photo for nearly an hour, waiting for it to change. It never did. By morning I decided to delete them, but when I opened my gallery again they were gone. Every one of them. Not in trash, not in cloud backup, just gone. And my phone battery, which had been at 80%, was dead. That afternoon I drove back to the ranger station near the trailhead. The guy at the desk recognized me. He'd seen my car the day before. I told him there was a structure off the trail, something not on the maps. He frowned, tapped a few things on his computer, then shook his head. "No cabins out there," he said. "You probably found one of the old moonshiner shacks. They're just piles of wood now." I told him it wasn't a pile, it was standing intact. And there was smoke from the chimney. He gave me a look, polite but distant, like he'd heard too many weird stories from tourists. "Well," he said, "best not go looking again. That stretch isn't safe after rain." I left, but as I walked out I caught something that froze me mid-step. On the bulletin board by the door were a few missing person flyers, faded, curled edges. One of them showed a young guy, maybe mid-20s, wearing hiking gear. Below the picture, last seen near Red Hollow Trailhead, same place I'd been. Date missing October 15th, 2013, 12 years ago. But what got me wasn't the date. It was the background of his photo, trees sure, but behind him, blurry in the distance, you could just make out the outline of a small wooden cabin. The same one I don't even remember driving home. I just remember the quiet, that kind of silence where you start to hear your own pulse. When I finally parked, my phone buzzed back to life. One new notification, photos. One new item added. My chest went tight. I opened the gallery. It was a single picture. The same cabin again, shot from a distance this time, sun cutting through the trees. Except now, there was someone standing on the porch, looking straight at the camera, and they were wearing my jacket. I didn't tell anyone. What was I supposed to say? That I'd found photos I didn't take of a cabin that shouldn't exist, and someone wearing my jacket standing on its porch? No one believes that kind of story unless they've lived it. For 2 days, I tried to go back to normal. I went to work, I showered, I pretended like everything was fine. But every time I closed my eyes, I saw the cabin again. Not in daylight, but in that dim gray light before dawn. And always the same. That figure standing there, still as stone, head tilted just enough to know it was watching me. By the third night, I couldn't take it anymore. I decided to delete everything, wipe the phone, just erase it all. When I plugged it into my laptop, though, something strange happened. The screen flickered once and a folder popped up I'd never seen before. It was labeled DCIM Cabin. Inside were 7 photos. The same 7 that had vanished, only this time there was an 8th one. The file name was just a timestamp, row 2:47 a.m. I clicked it before I could stop myself. It wasn't a picture of the woods. It was my apartment, taken from the corner of the room like someone had stood near the wall while I slept. My shape was visible in the bed, half covered, the light from my phone glowing faintly on the nightstand. My mouth went dry. I checked the time. 2:47 a.m., the exact time the file said it was taken. I hadn't woken up. I hadn't heard a sound. I tore through my apartment, checking the locks, the closet, even under the bed, nothing. Just empty air. But that smell was there again. Cold, burnt metal. Faint but undeniable. That's when I noticed my hiking boots by the door. Mud. Fresh, wet mud caked thick on the soles. I hadn't worn them since the woods. I tried to calm down, to think rationally. Maybe I'd stepped in something earlier. Maybe the photo was some kind of glitch, anything. But then came the knock. 3 slow knocks, the same rhythm. The same sound I'd heard on that cabin door. I froze, staring at the apartment door. My throat went tight. I couldn't make myself move. It came again. 3 heavy thuds, like whoever was out there knew exactly what they were doing. I whispered, "Who's there?" Silence. Then, from behind the door, a low, dragging sound. I backed away step by step until my calves hit the couch. The dragging stopped. For a few seconds, nothing. Then my phone buzzed in my hand, a new message, no number. Just a photo. It was the hallway outside my apartment. Taken from the other side of my door. I could see the bottom of the door frame, my own feet just visible beneath it. Like someone was standing right there, inches away, holding the phone. The air turned icy. Every hair on my body stood up. I didn't even think. I bolted for the bathroom, locked the door, and pressed myself against the cold tile floor. I sat there for hours, knees pulled to my chest, waiting for something to happen. Nothing did. No more knocks, no more messages. When morning came, sunlight spilled through the window like nothing had happened. Except when I finally stepped out, the apartment felt wrong. The light looked colder, the air heavier, and on the kitchen table, sitting right in the center, was my phone. I'd left it in the bathroom with me, but now it was there, screen on. Camera open, it was recording. I looked at the timer, 8 hours, 12 minutes. My finger hovered over the screen, trembling. I pressed play. The video started in total darkness. Then faintly I could hear it, footsteps slow and steady moving across the floor. The sound of the front door creaking open. A shape crossing the lens for a split second, tall, thin, clothes hanging off like soaked fabric. Then the whisper. Low, right near the microphone. "You came back." The recording cut out. "I don't go outside anymore. Not after sunset. I keep the blinds shut, every light on. But sometimes when the power flickers, I swear I see something reflected in the window. The faint outline of a cabin door. And when the house gets too quiet, I can still hear it. That slow, steady hum rising up from beneath the floorboards. Like the woods are right under me, waiting for me to step outside again. I haven't gone back to the trail. I don't think I ever will. But every morning when I check my phone, there's always one new photo in the gallery. It's always the same picture. The cabin. And every day it looks a little closer. I don't usually stop for things I find in the woods. Most of it's trash. Soda cans, beer bottles, old hunting gear left behind by people who never come back for it. But this wasn't trash. It was sitting inside the hollow of a massive oak, half buried in damp leaves, a small black tape recorder. The kind with the red rec button and cracked speaker grill. The kind my dad used to dictate notes on when I was a kid. At first I didn't even notice it. I'd been hiking off trail, following a set of weird, deep gouges in the dirt that looked like someone had dragged a heavy metal object. When I stopped to rest, I saw the flash of plastic in the tree hollow. Something about it didn't fit. There wasn't a path nearby, no reason for anyone to be here. It wasn't dusty or rusted either, like it had been put there recently. I brushed off the dirt and clicked the button. The cassette door creaked open and inside was a tape labeled in shaky handwriting. "Play me if you find this." That was it. No name, no date. I should have just left it there. But curiosity is a hell of a thing when you're alone in the woods and everything already feels a little off. So I pressed play. The tape clicked. Then came the hiss of static. After a few seconds, a man's voice spoke. Low, calm, a little too close to the mic. "If you're hearing this, then you're already on the path." I frowned, glanced around. The forest was silent. The voice continued. "You've passed the dead pine on your right. You're standing near the hollow tree now." My stomach dropped. I looked at the tree again, the same hollow where I'd found the recorder. The voice went on. You're wondering why it's here. You're thinking it's some kind of joke, but you're also scared to stop listening. I froze, because that was exactly what I was thinking. A crack sounded behind me, worse, a twig snapping. I spun around, heart pounding, but there was nothing. Just trees. The voice on the tape paused, a faint exhale through the speaker. Then quietly, "Don't turn around." I stopped breathing. Every part of me wanted to. The forest was silent now, too silent. The air felt heavy, colder. "It's close," the voice said. "It follows sound. You shouldn't have played the tape." I slammed the stop button. The sound cut out instantly, leaving only the wind through the trees. I stood there for a long time, trying to calm down, telling myself it had to be a prank, maybe some viral thing, or a weird art project. But then I noticed something. The dirt at my feet had fresh footprints in it. Big ones, bare, and they weren't mine. I should have run back to my car. I should have left that thing there, walked away, called someone, anything. But I didn't. Instead, I stared at those footprints, the shape of them, the length, bare feet, human, except the toes were too long and the edges pressed deep into the mud. Like whatever made them was heavier than they should have been. I tried to laugh it off, but my throat was too tight. The wind had stopped completely, not even a rustle in the leaves. The forest felt like it was holding its breath with me. I don't know what made me do it. Maybe shock, maybe disbelief, but I pressed play again. The static hissed back to life. "You're still here," the voice said. I flinched. It wasn't the same tone as before. It was rougher now, closer. "You looked at the footprints, didn't you?" I froze, staring down at the recorder. "They're not yours," the voice went on. "But they will be." I almost dropped the thing. My fingers were slick with sweat. The forest felt like it was leaning closer, listening with me. The man on the tape started to breathe heavier, ragged, almost panicked. And then there was something else, faint behind him. A noise that didn't sound human. A wet, dragging sound mixed with the crunch of leaves, he whispered. "Don't let it hear you." Then static, then silence. I stood there, every muscle in my body tight. I could hear my own heart beating in my ears. And then I heard it. Not from the recorder this time, but from somewhere deeper in the woods. That same dragging sound. Slow, steady, coming closer. I turned off the tape, shoved it in my jacket pocket and started walking fast, not running. Because every instinct screamed that running would make noise. I didn't look back. The trees pressed closer together, the air thicker and colder with every step. After a few minutes, I realized I'd lost the trail completely. My GPS wouldn't load. My compass needle spun in slow, lazy circles like it was drunk. That's when the tape started again, by itself. The faint click of the play button. I grabbed it out of my pocket, but the buttons didn't work anymore. The voice came through distorted, like someone speaking underwater. "It's behind you," my chest locked up. I turned slowly, barely breathing, nothing, just trees. But I could feel it. That heavy sense of being watched, like someone standing inches away but refusing to move. The tape crackled again. The voice was calmer now. "It's okay," it whispered. "It only takes one." "One what?" I said without meaning to. And the voice answered, "One more recording." My stomach twisted. Then a different voice came through the speaker, fainter, trembling, familiar. It was me. "Please," my own voice said. "If you find this, don't play it, just leave." I stood frozen in the middle of the woods, staring down at that old recorder as my own voice begged me from inside it. "It doesn't stop," my voice whispered through the static. "It learns you. It remembers. You can't run from it anymore." The tape clicked off, and then behind me, the dragging started again. Closer this time. I ran until my legs felt like rubber. Branches whipped my face, twigs snapped underfoot, but I didn't care how much noise I made anymore. The sound behind me never faded, it just stayed the same distance away, like whatever was following me didn't have to hurry. By the time I stopped, my lungs were burning. I dropped to my knees trying to catch my breath. The forest looked different now, thicker, darker, as if the sun had started to die. The tape recorder was still clutched in my hand. I don't even remember holding on to it. My thumb brushed the play button and it clicked again, on its own. Static filled the air. Then a voice, calm, familiar. You shouldn't have run. It wasn't the man anymore. It wasn't the trembling version of me from before either. This voice sounded like mine, but clearer, steadier, like I was listening to a version of myself that wasn't scared anymore. "You're about 30 yards from the stream," it said. "You're crouching beside the log with the moss on it. You keep looking left because you think it's behind you." I looked down. There was moss under my hand. The stream glimmered faintly ahead, exactly where it said it would be. My mouth went dry. "How are you?" I started, but the voice spoke over me. "Don't talk," it said softly. "You'll wake it up." Something cracked in the distance. Not a branch. Something heavier. A shifting of weight, the voice continued, perfectly calm. "It doesn't like the dark. It hides inside it. It wants you to listen. That's how it finds the next one." I gripped the recorder so tight my fingers hurt. "What next one?" "You already know." Then silence. The kind that swallows every sound, even your own breathing. The ground beneath me trembled, a faint vibration, like something big moving under the soil. My first thought was an earthquake, but then I heard it. Faint, low, and unmistakable. The hum. The same one from the cabin that wasn't there yesterday. That deep rhythmic pulse you don't just hear, you feel. I pressed stop. Nothing happened. The recorder kept going, the voice returning in a low whisper. "You left it behind once before." "No," I muttered. "No, I didn't." "Yes," it said. "You left the cabin. You left me there." Every hair on my neck stood up. The forest blurred for a second, the trees bending like they were breathing. I looked down, and the ground where I knelt was wrong. It wasn't dirt anymore. It was warped wood. Floorboards. I staggered back. My flashlight beam swept across the space around me, and for half a heartbeat I saw it, the outline of a cabin wall. The same carved warning on the boards, "Stay out of the trees after dark," and just as fast it was gone again. The recorder hissed. "You're almost done," my voice said. "It's only waiting for you to finish the tape." I looked at the counter. Bro 4207. The tape was nearly over. "Then what happens?" I whispered. The voice chuckled softly. "Then it starts recording." The static burst loud enough to make me drop it. The reel spun backward on its own, clicking rapidly until it stopped. The record button slammed down by itself. A new track began, and this time there was no voice. Just breathing. Mine, right now. The breathing on the tape matched mine perfectly. Every inhale, every shaky exhale, every pause when I tried to hold still. I could see the reels turning. Slowly, patiently. It was recording me. I took a step back, and through the static the sound echoed a half-second later, like the forest itself was repeating me. Step. Step. Didn't feel like an echo, though. It felt like something walking with me. I wanted to throw the recorder, to smash it against a rock, but I couldn't. My fingers wouldn't unclench. It was like holding on was the only thing keeping me real. Then my voice came through again. Not the one from before, this one was wrong, slower, distorted. "Don't stop. It's close." I turned in a slow circle. The trees all looked the same. Shadows leaned in strange directions, like the sun had given up trying to tell time. The voice continued, whispering between the crackles. "It needs an ending. Don't you understand? It always needs an ending." The hum under the ground returned. Deep, steady, pulsing through the soil. "The kind of sound that makes your chest vibrate," I whispered. "Who are you?" The voice didn't hesitate. "You." Static swallowed the words, louder now, sharp enough to hurt. My flashlight flickered, and for a second I saw something ahead of me, a figure standing half in shadow. Barefoot, skin gray with dirt, and in its hand, another tape recorder. It tilted its head the way a person does when they recognize themselves. Then it started walking toward me. Slow, deliberate steps, each one matching the static bursts from the speaker. The air felt like ice. My lungs wouldn't work. I backed away until my heel hit something solid. The hollow oak. "The same one." "You've come back," the voice on the tape said. I didn't think. I just shoved the recorder into the hollow and ran. I didn't care about the direction. I just ran until my legs gave out and the trees finally started to thin. When I stumbled out near the road, it was already dusk. My car was there, coated in a thin layer of dust like it had been sitting for days. I don't remember unlocking it or starting the engine. I just remember the forest in the rearview mirror, perfectly still like it was watching me leave. I drove until the GPS found a signal again. When I finally got home, I threw every light on, locked every door. I left the recorder in the woods. I swore I'd never touch another one again. But this morning, when I woke up, it was sitting on my kitchen counter, clean, dry, and the tape inside wasn't the same one. The new label read, Side B, your turn. I thought about smashing it, burning it, anything. But instead I did what I knew I shouldn't. I pressed play, no static this time. Just a voice mine. If you're hearing this, it said, calm and steady, then you're already on the path. You've passed the dead pine on your right. You're standing near the hollow tree now. My blood went cold. I looked toward my window. Outside, past the glass, I could just make out the outline of trees. And there, half hidden behind them, something darker, motionless, holding a small black recorder. Don't turn around, my voice whispered. And then, the faint click of the record button. The first thing that hit me was the smell. Not rot, not exactly. More like wet leather and smoke that had gone sour. It clung to the air, thick enough that I could taste it on the back of my tongue. I remember standing there staring at the little clearing ahead of me. The call had come in around 7 a.m. Hikers reporting a campsite that looked too perfect, whatever that meant. When I arrived, I understood. The place looked staged. Tent zipped up neatly, firewood stacked like it was measured, and half a breakfast laid out on a metal plate, eggs and sausage still glistening with grease, like someone had just walked away mid-bite. But no one was there. The woods were silent. Even the wind felt like it was holding its breath. I took a few steps closer, crunching through frost-covered pine needles. The tent was older, canvas, not nylon, but clean. Too clean, no dirt on the base, no mud smears on the zippers, and that smell just kept getting stronger. I radioed in. Base, this is Ranger Calloway. I've located the site. No sign of occupants yet. Static crackled back, but no voice. I frowned. The signal shouldn't have been that bad out here. I tried again. Same thing. That's when I noticed something hanging inside the tent, visible through the thin canvas when the wind shifted. Something pale. Something stretched. I unzipped the flap and froze. The entire inner wall was lined with hides. Animal hides, from what I could tell. Deer, maybe elk. But they weren't cured right. They were still damp, faintly pink around the edges. Whoever had done this had scraped them down and tacked them up with neat, obsessive precision. My flashlight caught on something glistening. Thread. Thick, sinewy thread stitching small tears together. I backed out slowly, fighting the instinct to bolt. This was a crime scene. That's what I told myself. Don't contaminate it. Don't panic. Then something shifted behind the tent. A slow, dragging sound like fabric brushing bark. I spun around, light cutting through the trees. Nothing. But there were footprints. Fresh ones, bare human and smeared in mud that hadn't frozen over yet. They circled the camp, not leaving, not approaching, just circling. That smell got stronger again. I forced myself to move, checking the fire pit. The coals were still faintly warm. That meant whoever had been here was nearby. Maybe minutes away. That's when I saw it. Near the edge of the clearing, propped against a tree, was a long wooden rack, the kind hunters use for drying hides. Only these weren't animal skins, they were too small, too smooth. I didn't even realize I was shaking until I dropped my flashlight. It rolled across the ground and stopped against the tent flap, beam catching on one of the stretched hides. For a second, I thought my eyes were playing tricks on me, because it blinked, just once. The skin twitched like it still remembered being alive. I stumbled back, breathing hard, whispering, "No, no, no." No, the radio crackled again. But this time it wasn't static. It was breathing. Shallow, wet breathing right next to my ear. Then a whisper, "Don't move." I froze. For a long moment, all I could hear was the wind scraping through the pines. Then something heavy stepped out from behind the trees. Slow, deliberate. The figure wore a ranger's jacket. My jacket, my name patch even, and the face. It wasn't his face. It was stretched too tight, the eyes glistening like glass marbles pushed into wax. He, or it, tilted its head like it was studying me and said softly, in my exact voice, Why'd you come back here? I didn't answer it. I couldn't. My throat locked up and all I could do was stare at that thing wearing my jacket, wearing something's face. The voice was perfect. Too perfect. It had that same rasp I get after long days of radio duty. The same rhythm, the same pause before I breathe in to speak. Why'd you come back here? It repeated. I finally found my voice, but it came out hoarse. Who the hell are you? It smiled, or tried to. The skin around its mouth cracked a little, like it had dried too tight. Been waiting, it said. Then it tilted its head again and took one slow step forward. I backed up until I hit the edge of the fire pit. My boot slipped on ash and I nearly went down. The thing stopped, cocked its head the other way, and just watched me. No blinking. No breathing I could hear anymore. It looked like it was listening for something. That's when my radio squawked. Calloway, you copy? We're about 15 out. The voice was Mark's, one of the rangers I'd trained with. Relief hit me so fast it almost hurt. I grabbed the radio. Mark, there's someone here. The rest of the sentence never made it out because the figure in front of me smiled wider, and the same voice, Mark's voice, came from it. 15 out, it said again, perfectly matched. Calloway, you copy? I dropped the radio. The sound echoed like a gunshot in the still woods. The thing didn't move. Didn't need to. I realized with a sudden icy certainty that it didn't have to chase me. It was waiting for me to move first. I forced my legs to work. One step back. Then another. The figure didn't follow. It just turned its head slightly toward the tent where the hide still hung. Its voice came out lower this time, almost a whisper. We keep what we wear. Then it blinked. Every instinct screamed run. So I did. I tore through the trees, branches whipping my arms, boots catching on roots. My flashlight beam jumped wildly across trunks and brush until it finally gave out. Darkness swallowed me whole. All I had was the faint glow of my radio screen. I pressed the button, gasping. Base, this is Calloway. Need backup, campsite, something's here. Static answered me. Then that same shallow breathing again. Calloway. It said my name over and over, each time quieter. Then a pause. Why'd you leave? I slammed the radio off and kept running. After what felt like hours, I stumbled onto the old ranger trail. Barely a path now, mostly overgrown. My lungs burned. My legs shaking so bad I could hardly stand. I could see the faint orange glow of sunrise just touching the treetops. If I could make it back to the truck, I could get out. Get help. That's when I saw it. A flicker of movement to my left. Just a blur of khaki and dark hair through the trees. Someone pacing me, maybe 30 yards away, keeping perfect distance. Mark? I called, my voice cracking. That you? No answer. Just the faint sound of fabric stretching. Then from the same direction, my own voice echoed back. That you? I stopped. I didn't even realize I was crying until I tasted salt. I forced myself to keep walking, slower now, scanning every shadow. The woods were starting to feel different, wrong somehow. The smell had followed me. That same wet leather, smoke, stale rot. Then I heard footsteps behind me. I turned fast. Nothing. The sound stopped as soon as I did. When I turned back forward, there was a figure standing in the path ahead. It wasn't the same one from before. This one was smaller, thinner. The face didn't fit right. The mouth too low, the eyes too wide. The skin looked newer, fresher, and across the chest of the ranger's jacket it wore, I could just make out the faded patch letters. M. Saunders Mark. He opened his mouth, and for a second I thought I saw real fear in the eyes behind the too tight skin. Then it spoke, voice trembling like a child's. Help me take it off. For a second I couldn't move. Mark's voice, or what was left of it, sounded like it was coming through water, muffled and broken. The thing wearing his skin took one step toward me, and I saw how the seams around its neck were pulled tight with something dark, maybe sinew or twine. The edges of the face were puckered like it had been stitched on in a hurry. Please, it said again, help me take it off. I lifted my flashlight with shaking hands, shining it right in its face. The eyes weren't right, not fake, not glass, but too still, too dry. I couldn't tell if they were really looking at me or just painted on. I stumbled backward, shaking my head. You're not him, its breathing hitched. He was inside, it whispered. Then he wasn't. What do you mean, inside? But it didn't answer. It just reached up with one trembling hand and grabbed at its own cheek, digging in its nails until thin lines of red ran down its neck. I took another step back, bile rising in my throat. That's when I heard something moving behind me. Not footsteps this time, something dragging. A slow scrape of weight through needles and dirt. I turned the light and my stomach turned cold. There were more of them. 3 shapes, half hidden by the trees. All wearing bits of ranger gear, mismatched, torn, stained with something dark. Their movements were jerky, wrong, like they were learning how to walk. And each one had that same stretched, too smooth skin over its face like a mask that wasn't finished. Mark, or whatever was left of him, whispered, "They don't like when you run." Then it screamed. A sound that didn't belong in a human throat, high, wet, and broken, as the other shapes rushed forward. I bolted. Branches tore at my face. My jacket caught on bark. But I didn't stop. The forest wasn't just dark anymore. It was closing in. Every direction looked the same, pines, deadfall, frosted ground. My own ragged breath. Somewhere behind me, that scream kept going, getting fainter but no less sharp. I didn't realize where I was heading until I saw the glint of metal through the trees, the old ranger tower. It had been condemned years ago, but right then it was the only thing that looked remotely safe. I hit the stairs hard, climbing 2 at a time. Every creak of the wood echoed like a gunshot. I reached the top and slammed the trapdoor shut, bracing it with an old chair. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped my flashlight again. The room was small, a cot, a desk, a cracked window, dust everywhere. But when I looked out, the forest below didn't look like the same place I'd just run through. The clearing was gone. Where the campsite should have been was just a patch of undisturbed ground. No tent, no fire, no footprints, nothing. I leaned closer to the window, and that's when I saw movement below shapes, dozens of them, just standing at the tree line, barely visible in the weak light. Every few seconds, one of them shifted, and the faint gleam of stretched skin caught my beam. All of them were looking up. At me. The radio on the desk crackled suddenly, making me flinch so hard I almost fell. "Calloway," it said. A woman's voice this time. "Dispatch, we've got your signal. You need to respond." My throat was dry. I grabbed the radio. I'm here. I'm at the old tower. There's something out here." Static cut me off. Then through the hiss came my own voice again. "I'm at the old tower," it repeated. "There's something out here. Who is this?" I whispered. The reply came softer. "Look down." I did. One of the figures had moved closer, standing at the bottom of the stairs, perfectly still, and in the rising light of dawn, I could finally see its face. It was mine. For a second, I couldn't even breathe. That thing at the base of the tower, me, didn't move. It just stood there, head tilted up like it was waiting for permission to climb. The skin looked new. I could see faint red where it hadn't fully settled against the neck, like it had been glued in place. It smiled, but it wasn't my smile. It stretched too far. Then in my voice it called up, "You left the flap open." My heart slammed against my ribs. The tent, the one I'd unzipped. The thought hit me like a hammer. I'd opened it. I'd let something out. The thing took one step onto the stairs. The wood groaned beneath its weight. I yanked my sidearm out. I hadn't even realized I still had it, and aimed down through the window. "Stop, don't move." It didn't. Instead, a chorus of voices rose from the tree line, low, wet, and all too human. Dozens of them. Some whispered, some called my name. They sounded scared, pleading. Then I realized what was wrong. They weren't coming from the people below. They were coming from the skins themselves. The sound wasn't voices, when it was air, pushing through stretched mouths that shouldn't have been able to speak. The thing wearing my face took another step. Then another. The radio hissed on the desk. "Ranger Calloway," a voice said. Calm, professional, someone from the station. "We've got units en route to your coordinates." Stay put, I wanted to believe that voice. God, I wanted to. But as soon as I picked up the radio, I heard it. Faint, echoing. The exact same message coming from outside. From my double. "Stay put." I dropped the radio and backed toward the far wall. The tower creaked, shuddering under the weight as it climbed. I could hear its boots on the rungs, heavy, deliberate. I pointed the gun down through the trapdoor opening. "Don't come up here." Silence. Then a slow, deliberate knock, 3 times, like it was asking. And then my own voice, muffled but perfectly calm. "Let me in. You don't want to be outside when it moves." When it moves? I hesitated. My arm trembled so badly I almost dropped the gun. The air felt charged, heavy like the forest itself was listening. The smell of leather and smoke thickened until it made my eyes water. I couldn't think, couldn't breathe. So I did the only thing I could. I ran. I kicked open the door at the back of the tower, the emergency exit, and clambered down the old maintenance ladder bolted to the side. My hands burned from the rust and cold, but I didn't stop until I hit the ground. The woods were different now, quiet in a way that hurt. The air didn't move, the trees didn't creak, and every single figure that had been standing at the tree line was gone. Except one. It stood about 20 feet away, turned halfway toward me. Its skin looked half torn, half new, one side smooth and pale, the other raw. And in the dawn light I realized the truth I'd been avoiding. The hides in the tent weren't just trophies. They were suits. Something in this forest, maybe not a person, maybe not anything we have a name for, was wearing us, one at a time. Taking the people who came looking and using what was left. The thing tilted its head, and I swear I heard it breathe in, like it was smelling me. Then it said softly, "You fit better than the last one." I fired. The echo tore through the woods, scattering a flock of crows from the treetops. When the smoke cleared, the thing was gone, just gone. No blood, no body, only that smell. I ran until I hit the service road. I don't even remember driving back to base. The next thing I remember is lights, red and blue, and voices shouting. They searched the forest for days. Never found the campsite, never found Mark. But last night I got a call on my radio. I didn't think it even worked anymore, static first. Then a voice that sounded exactly like mine. "Why'd you come back?" "I'm not going back out there again." I can still smell the smoke when I try to sleep. And sometimes I swear I hear someone breathing just outside my window. And this morning, when I checked the ranger log for my uniform issue, there were 2 jackets listed under my name. The first thing I remember is the sound, that thin, wet groan echoing through the stone. It wasn't wind. It was too slow, too deliberate. I felt it through my gloves before I even heard it, like the earth itself was breathing against my palms. I was 20 meters below the forest floor, wedged between 2 slick limestone walls, my headlamp slicing through dust and dripping moss. The air was thick, heavy with the smell of soil and rot. The kind of rot that feels ancient. Not decay from last season's leaves, but something deeper, older. I should have turned back right then. The crevice wasn't even on my map. It had opened near the old hiking trail after the last storm, a narrow slit in the ground where a tree had uprooted and torn the soil apart. I'd been caving for years, but this one felt different. I could see roots hanging like wet ropes twisting down into darkness, and something in me, that stupid part of me that's always curious, thought, just one look. I slid in feet first, scraping my back on stone. The deeper I went, the quieter everything became. The forest sounds, wind, birds, distant cars, and all faded out, replaced by a low hum. I thought it was tinnitus at first, but it had rhythm. It pulsed like a heartbeat buried under rock. When my boots finally hit flat ground, I realized I was standing in a small hollow. My light bounced off something smooth and curved ahead of me. Not stone and wood. At first I thought it was just the root system of the fallen tree. But the more I looked, the less natural it seemed. The roots weren't tangled at random, they'd been woven. Thick, gnarled strands interlaced into walls, arching up to form a ceiling that met in a point like a dome. It looked almost architectural, like someone had grown a structure instead of building it. And in the center of the space, half buried in dirt, were candles. They were still burning. I froze. My mind tried to rationalize. Maybe someone else was down here. A hermit, an artist, some local weirdos. But the wax was smooth, untouched. No smoke in the air, no footprints in the soil. Just those flames flickering in slow, lazy waves like they'd been burning for years. I said out loud without meaning to, "Hello?" My voice came back soft, distorted, like it was swallowed by the roots. Then I swear, something whispered back. It wasn't words at first. Just the sound of my voice echoed wrong, lagging by a half second, curling back at me. But the tone was different. It was quieter, strained, like someone repeating what I said while choking on dirt. I lifted my light toward the walls. The roots shivered. It wasn't my imagination, I saw them move. A subtle ripple as if they'd reacted to my breath. That was when I noticed the carvings, dozens of them, etched deep into the wooden walls, spirals, cross-like shapes and eyes. So many eyes, carved one over another until the surface looked like a swarm of them watching from beneath the bark. I felt that same hum again, stronger this time. It vibrated through my boots into my bones. My flashlight flickered, dimmed, then steadied. I wanted to call out again, but my throat was dry. Every instinct said leave, but the tunnel behind me looked darker now, like the shadows had thickened. I could barely see the slit of light where I'd entered. Then I heard it again, the whisper, clearer now, matching my own breath. When I exhaled, the roots sighed with me. When I swallowed, something in the walls made the same tiny, wet click. I took one step backward and my boot hit something soft. I turned my light down. A small pile of what looked like rotted fabric. Old clothes, maybe. A torn backpack strap. I crouched, brushing away the dirt, and saw the corner of something metallic and a flashlight. Rusted and broken, and next to it, carved into the packed soil, were 4 words. They listen when you breathe. My chest tightened. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. The whispering stopped, and in that silence, and that terrible living silence, I realized I wasn't the first person to find this place. I was just the next. I don't know how long I stood there holding my breath. The light trembled in my hand and my lungs burned, but I couldn't make myself inhale. That sentence, they listen when you breathe, looped in my head like a warning whispered too late. When I finally did breathe, I did it through clenched teeth, slow and shallow, hoping whatever they were wouldn't notice. The candles hadn't moved, but the flames leaned toward me now, bending in the still air. The hum in the floor had become steadier, rising and falling like a pulse. I turned my light toward the tunnel I'd come through. It was gone. Or at least it looked gone. The split in the wall was still there, but it was smaller now, sealed with more roots that hadn't been there before. That's when the first whisper came again. It started as a hiss, thin and papery like dry leaves being rubbed together. Then beneath it, I heard something closer to speech. My own voice repeating the last word I'd said. Gone. Only it didn't sound like a normal echo. It dragged, stuttering slightly, like someone trying to copy me but struggling to form the sounds. My light dimmed again. The batteries had been new. I pointed it at the carvings. Some of them had changed. I could swear the eyes were deeper now, the grooves still moist as if freshly cut. I ran my gloved fingers over one and felt warmth under the bark. Not heat, body warmth. I yanked my hand back. My glove came away dark, sticky. Sap, I told myself, even though it smelled like blood. Something dripped behind me. 1, 2, 3 drops. The sound echoed faintly as if falling from a great height. That didn't make sense. There was no ceiling gap. I shined the beam up. The roots above had shifted. They weren't woven tight anymore. Small spaces had opened between them, just enough to see slivers of what looked like light, not daylight. It was softer, a dull amber glow, as if candles burned above me through a floor of living wood. And there was movement in that glow. A shadow pacing, slow, careful steps. I whispered, "Hello?" Before I could stop myself, the whisper came back instantly. "Hello," it said, perfectly matched, same tone, same breath pattern. I froze. Then the whisper laughed. It was a dry, broken sound, like something learning how to laugh by memory alone. The roots in front of me started to peel apart, soundlessly revealing another passage, narrow, winding downward. The air that rushed out of it was warm and wet, carrying the smell of burnt wax and soil. I should have left. I should have clawed my way back up, even if it tore my hands open. But I kept thinking about those candles still burning, and the person who'd written that warning in the dirt. Maybe they were still down here. Maybe they were alive. So I followed the passage. The tunnel sloped gently, and the deeper I went, the more it felt like walking through a throat. The walls pulsed faintly, and sometimes I thought I could hear a distant heartbeat. My light caught faces in the roots, not carved ones this time, but grown. Knots and twists shaped like human features, mouths open, eyes shut. Some looked like they were screaming. The whispering never stopped. It followed me just behind my shoulder, too close to be an echo. Every time I stepped, it stepped. Every breath I took, it sighed. Then I heard something different, a voice that wasn't mine. It was faint. A woman's voice, hoarse and broken. I couldn't tell what she was saying, but it was close. I picked up my pace, light jittering over the walls until I turned a corner and stepped into another chamber. This one was larger, like a real chapel. The ceiling rose into a dome of tangled roots thick as tree trunks, and at the center stood something that made my stomach drop. An altar, carved entirely from living wood. The surface was smooth, polished, but the base was rooted into the floor like veins. Candles burned around it in perfect circles, and behind the altar, tangled halfway into the wall, was a human skeleton. It wasn't placed there. It had grown into the wood. The ribs and spine were fused with the roots, wrapped tight. A skull stared down at me, its jaw half covered in bark. That was when the woman's voice came again, clear this time, right behind me. "Don't let them hear you." I spun around. My light hit the walls. No one there, but the whisper, my whisper, had stopped mimicking me. Now it was whispering something. Knew something I couldn't understand until I realized it wasn't speaking. To me, it was answering her. I didn't run right away. I just stood there, my light shaking in my hand, listening to them, to it, whispering in a language that didn't sound like words at all. It was wet and heavy, like the sound of something breathing through mud. The woman's voice had vanished. All that remained was the low hum again, deep and rhythmic, pulsing through the ground beneath my boots. I backed up, keeping my light on the altar. The skeleton looked different now. The wood had crept further around it, I swear it had, curling over the shoulders, threading through the ribs. I could see new bark forming along the bone as if the tree was still growing. And under the candlelight, the skull almost looked like it was smiling. I wanted to scream, but my voice felt lodged in my throat. My heartbeat filled my ears, and I realized the rhythm matched the hum beneath me. Every pulse in my chest, the roots seemed to answer. I forced a whisper. "Who are you?" For a few seconds, there was only the sound of the candles flickering. Then softly, right beside my ear, came the reply. "Remember." I spun around, nearly tripping over a root, but the space behind me was empty. The whisper came again, this time from ahead, then from above, then from inside the walls. Dozens of voices blending into one. "Remember." Each word made the walls tremble slightly, dust sifting down from the ceiling. The faces in the wood shifted, slow like something stirring beneath skin. Their mouths opened and closed in unison, releasing faint sighs that merged into a single note, low and sorrowful. I couldn't take it. I ran. The tunnel I came through twisted differently now, or maybe I'd turned the wrong way. My light bounced over wet roots, narrow gaps, turns that hadn't been there before. Everything smelled stronger. Soil, sap, and something else. Something human. Then I heard it. A dragging sound behind me. Not footsteps. The scrape of something heavy moving through the tunnel. I pushed forward until I hit another open space. Smaller this time. My light swept over the walls and then I froze. They weren't carvings anymore. They were photographs, hundreds of them, pinned and half-grown into the wood. Polaroids faded and warped by moisture. Faces of people, some smiling, some crying, all caught mid-expression. I stepped closer and realized the photos were recent. Clothes from different decades, some modern. One of them made me stop breathing. It was me, taken from behind. My backpack, my jacket, even the same dirt stains. The photo was pinned to the wall, fresh as if printed minutes ago. I turned slowly, light trembling across the chamber. There was no one there, but I could feel it. The weight of eyes that weren't human anymore. Something brushed against my ankle. I jumped back. It was a thin root, twitching slightly, retracting into the dirt like a worm. Then I saw movement near the floor, roots shifting, weaving together, forming shapes, letters, words. Stay. My stomach dropped. I stumbled backward, tripping over uneven ground, and my hand landed on something soft again. Cloth. When I turned the light, I saw another body, half buried. A woman this time. The same one from the skeleton, maybe, but fresher. Her face was covered in bark, only her mouth visible, lips cracked but moving slightly. And from that mouth came the faintest whisper. "Please, don't breathe." I froze. The hum grew louder, vibrating the walls. The candles flickered out one by one until only the faint glow from the roots remained. Amber veins crawling through the dark, pulsing like veins under skin. Then the voices came back, all together, Louder, angry. Remember. Stay. Join. The roots began to move. Slowly, deliberately, they reached toward me. I turned and ran again, shoving through the narrowing tunnel, scraping my arms against bark and stone. The passage behind me was closing. I could hear it creaking shut, roots knotting together. I don't remember how long I ran. My light died completely, but I kept going, feeling my way through the dark until I saw the faintest shimmer of real light ahead. Daylight, bleeding through a thin crack. I clawed at it with everything I had. Bark tore under my nails. I could feel the air from above, cold and clean. I dragged myself up through dirt, through roots, until I burst out onto the forest floor. I collapsed, gasping, covered in soil and sap. The sun was setting. The forest was quiet. But as I lay there catching my breath, I noticed something. The sound of leaves rustling. Not from the wind, but from the ground beneath me. When I lifted my hand, a small root was wrapped around my wrist and it was still moving. I didn't go straight home. I couldn't. My hands were shaking too hard to drive, so I sat in my car at the trailhead, mud smeared on my clothes, staring at the tree line as the sun sank. The forest looked different now, darker somehow. Even in daylight, every time the wind moved the branches, I thought I saw them twitch just slightly, like they were breathing. I kept telling myself I'd imagined it all, that the air down there had messed with me, lack of oxygen, panic, exhaustion. But when I looked down at my wrist, the place where the root had wrapped around me was still there, a faint red ring like a burn mark. I scrubbed at it until my skin went raw, but I couldn't get the feeling off. It wasn't pain exactly, as it was pressure, like something was still gripping me from underneath. By the time I got back to town, it was dark. I told myself I'd report it in the morning, maybe even go back with someone, park rangers, another caver, anyone. But that night, lying in bed, I couldn't stop hearing the whisper. It wasn't in my ears anymore. It was inside my breath. Every inhale had an echo. That soft, almost human sound following a half-second later. I covered my mouth, held my breath, but even then I could feel it pressing back, pulsing faintly in rhythm with my heartbeat. At 3 a.m., I turned on the light. My bedroom smelled like wet soil. I checked the windows, closed. The door unlocked, but the smell was stronger near the floor, and when I knelt down, I saw tiny cracks between the wooden boards. Something pale and fibrous was pushing through, small, hair-thin roots. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I drove back to the trailhead to make sure it was real, to prove to myself I hadn't lost my mind. But the crevice was gone. The ground where I'd climbed out was sealed, smooth earth, covered in leaves. Even the tree that had fallen during the storm was upright again, its roots buried deep like it had never moved. I dug for an hour, with my hands, with sticks, anything, but there was nothing. No hollow, no sign of disturbance. That's when I found the candle. It was half buried in the dirt beside the trail. The wax was fresh, unburned, and wrapped around it was a thin strand of root, the same dark, slick color as the ones below. When I picked it up, I swear I heard the faintest sigh. That night, the whispering came back louder. Not just in my breath this time, from the walls, from the floor, from inside the pipes. Every surface seemed to hum with it, like the sound was growing out of the house itself. I tried to record it on my phone. When I played it back, there was nothing but static. Then, buried deep in the noise, I heard myself whisper, "Please, don't breathe." I dropped the phone. My chest tightened. I couldn't stop shaking. I don't remember when I fell asleep, but when I woke up the next morning, there was dirt on my sheets, small clumps scattered near my feet. My shoes were by the door, caked in mud I didn't recognize. I went to the bathroom to wash my hands and caught sight of myself in the mirror. There was something dark along my neck, a line of veins I hadn't seen before, faint but branching outward like cracks in glass. And for a moment, just one, I thought I saw them move. I don't leave the house much anymore. The whispering hasn't stopped. It's quieter during the day, but at night it fills every corner, every breath. Sometimes I hear it outside the window, like the forest is breathing against the glass. Last week I tried sleeping with the window open, hoping the sound would fade if I let it out. But in the morning, there were roots growing up the siding of the house, tiny, white, and fresh. They're spreading faster now. I can hear them under the floorboards, behind the walls, inside the pipes. Every night, closer. Sometimes when the whisper gets loud enough, I think I can make out words. It's not my voice anymore. It's theirs. They keep saying the same thing over and over. Remember. I don't know what they want me to remember, but when I breathe, I feel them breathe with me. Slow, steady, patient, and sometimes just before I fall asleep, I think I hear another voice among them. A woman's, soft, broken. Don't let them hear you. Only now I understand what she meant, because when I hold my breath, the house goes silent. And when I exhale, when I can't help it anymore, I hear the whisper again. This time it says my name. The laughter started just after midnight. At first I thought it was one of my friends, maybe Jess or Eric, trying to mess with me from their tent. It was that kind of weekend. Cheap beer, bad ghost stories, and a half-serious dare to camp in the one place locals kept warning us about. Birch Hollow. I'd grown up hearing the stories. The girl who went missing in '89. The search parties that found nothing but her backpack and one torn shoe by the creek. The way people said if you camped there long enough, you'd hear her laugh. Light, quick, and too close. We didn't believe any of it. Not really, but when I woke up that night to the sound of giggling outside my tent, soft, breathy, unmistakably childish, I felt something twist deep in my chest. It wasn't the wind. It wasn't one of us. The sound came from just beyond the fire pit, maybe 20 feet away. It wasn't a full laugh either. More like the start of one that got caught halfway, repeated again and again, the same rhythm. I unzipped the tent as quietly as I could. The air outside was freezing, and the forest smelled like damp wood and smoke. The fire had burned down to orange coals, barely giving off light. "Jess?" I whispered. Nothing. Their tents were dark, zipped up. The laughter had stopped. I listened hard, holding my breath. The only thing I heard was the creak of the trees and the distant sound of water moving somewhere downhill. Then behind me, a single crunch of leaves. I spun around, flashlight beam slicing through the dark. It caught on something small by the edge of the clearing, a shape that vanished as soon as I focused on it. I told myself it was an animal. A raccoon, maybe. But when I walked over to check, my light landed on the ground wide and my throat went dry. Footprints, tiny ones. Bare. They circled the camp, little muddy ovals pressed into the dirt, weaving between our tents and around the dead fire. The mud was still wet. My flashlight flickered. I tapped it against my palm until it steadied, but by then the forest had gone completely silent. No bugs, no wind, just that heavy, waiting kind of quiet that makes you feel like something's listening. I backed up slowly toward my tent. That's when I saw it, the glint of something white on the nearest tree. A photo. It was pinned there with a single metal tack, fluttering slightly in the cold air. When I got close enough to see, I felt my stomach turn. It was a picture of a little girl, maybe 8 or 9. Blonde hair, dirty face, eyes that looked just off from the camera. She was standing right where our fire pit was now. The photo looked old, yellowed at the edges. But the print itself was fresh, like it had just come out of a modern camera. I pulled it off the tree and took it back to my tent. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. I woke Jess and Eric up, shoved the photo toward them. Jess frowned. "Where'd you get this?" "Someone pinned it outside," I said. "Look at the background." She leaned closer. "That's our fire pit." Eric groaned, half asleep. "Man, you're screwing with us." "I'm not," I said. "Check the ground." There's footprints. That got them both up. We went outside, flashlights cutting across the clearing. The prints were still there. Dozens of them, circling all 3 tents, overlapping each other like she'd been running in circles. Jess whispered, "What the hell kind of animal does that?" We followed them to the tree line, but they stopped cold just before the brush, like she'd vanished mid-step. Eric swore under his breath and said we should pack up and leave, but Jess refused. "It's just some local kid trying to scare us," she said, even though her voice shook. We argued for a few minutes, whispering harshly, flashlights bobbing over the trees. That's when the laughter started again. It was closer this time, right behind us. We turned all at once, lights flashing over the same spot. Nothing there. Just black trunks and drifting mist, then the sound moved. To our left, then to our right. Like it was circling us, Eric shouted, "Who's out there?" His voice cracked halfway through, no answer. Just one more laugh. Short, high, and impossibly close, right behind my ear. I spun, nearly dropping the flashlight. No one, but I could feel it, the cold. A pocket of air that didn't belong in summer, brushing the back of my neck like someone had just exhaled there. I didn't sleep after that. None of us did. We sat by the fire until morning, pretending to joke about it, but every time the woods creaked, Jess jumped. When the sun finally rose, the footprints were gone. Even the ones I'd seen first, smoothed out like the dirt had healed itself overnight. But the photo was still in my tent, and when I looked at it again in daylight, I noticed something I hadn't before. There were 3 tents in the background, just like ours. We packed up fast the next morning. No one said much. Jess kept rubbing her arms even though the air was already warm, and Eric wouldn't look at the trees. I could feel it too. That thick, heavy quiet like the forest was holding its breath. I told myself we'd laugh about it later. Get home, take showers, post the pictures. Pretend it was just nerves. We loaded our stuff, kicked dirt over the ashes, and hiked toward the trailhead. It should have taken 30 minutes to reach the road. We'd marked the trees on the way in, orange tape every 100 feet. But after an hour of walking, we came out into a clearing that made my stomach drop. Our clearing. The fire pit. The same bent birch tree with the split trunk. Our footprints in the dirt. Jess froze. No way, Eric shook his head. We went straight, we did. I swear we did. We tried again, picked a new direction, followed the sun, even used the compass on my phone. After 40 minutes, we came out into the same clearing again. By then, the light was starting to fade, that long golden stretch before sunset. I could feel panic starting to settle in, a crawling heat behind my ribs. We should stay put, I said. We'll get turned around in the dark. Jess didn't argue this time. She just sat down hard near the dead fire and buried her face in her hands. Eric started pacing. There's no way this is happening. We followed a straight line. We should have hit the creek by now. He stopped, staring at something near the trees. Another photo. It was pinned to a different birch, low enough for a child to reach. This one wasn't old looking at all. The edges were still curling from the heat, the print barely dry. We all stepped closer. It was the same little girl, same dirty face, but she was smiling wider now. Her head was tilted just enough that you could see her neck. A faint mark like bruises in a perfect ring. And behind her, 3 figures, blurry, out of focus, but the colors were unmistakable. Jess's blue jacket, Eric's red hoodie, my gray beanie. Jess made a sound I'd never heard before, half gasp, half sob. That wasn't there before. Eric tore the photo off the tree and threw it into the fire pit. We're leaving, now. We grabbed our packs again and ran, no plan, no direction, just away. Branches whipped at my face, the ground soft and uneven underfoot. Every few seconds I glanced back, expecting to see something following. But there was nothing, just trees, endless and repeating. After what felt like forever, we stopped to catch our breath. My chest hurt. I checked the time, 8:41 p.m. We'd been running nearly an hour, and somehow, impossibly, when I turned the flashlight ahead, the beam hit something familiar, the same bent birch trunk. We were back. Eric threw his backpack on the ground and started swearing. Jess started crying quietly like she didn't want to make noise. The air felt heavier now, thicker, like humidity but colder, wet, clinging cold that seeped into my lungs. I tried to light the fire again, but the wood wouldn't catch. The lighter flame just sputtered and died like there wasn't enough air. Then the laughter came back, faint at first, far off through the trees. A single laugh, then another, overlapping slightly, like an echo chasing itself. Jess whispered, "Don't answer it." We sat frozen, barely breathing. The sound moved through the woods, circling. Each time it came around, it was closer. When it stopped, I thought maybe it was over. But then I looked at the ground. New footprints, small, bare, pressed deep into the dirt. They started at the tree line and led straight toward us. "Get in the tents," I said. My voice came out too high, almost a whisper. We zipped ourselves in, flashlights off, hearts pounding so loud I could hear Jess shaking beside me through the thin nylon. The footsteps started a few minutes later. Slow, wet, crunching leaves in uneven rhythm. 1, 2, we paused, then closer. They circled the tents, dragging slightly like someone walking with one bare foot and one in mud. Then silence. I don't know how long it lasted. Maybe seconds, maybe hours. When I finally dared to look, I peeled the zipper just an inch and shined my light through. A shape was standing between our tents. Small, still. The beam hit her legs first, bare, caked with mud. A thin white dress soaked at the hem, and hair hanging down in clumps dripping dark water onto the dirt. She was turned away from me. Facing Jess's tent, my throat went dry. "Jess," I whispered, barely audible. Jess didn't move. The girl tilted her head, just slightly, like she'd heard me. Then she turned. Her face was pale, wet, eyes too wide, the whites yellowed. And she smiled, slow, deliberate, her lips cracking at the corners. Her mouth opened like she wanted to say something, but the sound that came out wasn't speech. It was static, that sharp electric hiss like a detuned radio turned all the way up. Then the light died. Darkness swallowed everything, and over the static, I heard my own voice whisper from somewhere behind me, "Don't leave me." When I opened my eyes, the fire pit was cold. Morning light cut through the fog in dull streaks, gray and flat. Jess's tent was unzipped halfway. Eric's was still closed. For a second, I thought maybe I'd dreamed the whole thing. But then I saw the prints. They weren't just around the tents anymore. They went through them. Small, muddy steps pressed into the nylon walls like someone had walked straight through the fabric without tearing it. Jess was already outside, pacing. Her hair was wild, her face pale. "She was here," she said, voice shaking. I saw her shadow inside my tent. She kept whispering. "What did she say?" Jess looked at me, eyes glassy. "She said she's cold." Eric climbed out of his tent a minute later, slow, dazed. He had dirt on his face and under his nails. "I think I blacked out," he muttered. "Dreamed I was underwater." I didn't tell him about the static. We decided to hike again. Daylight made it easier to believe we could get out. I marked every tree we passed, carved small X's with my knife. We walked for almost 2 hours before Jess stopped dead. She was staring at a trunk a few feet ahead. My mark was there. The same mark. The cut still fresh, sap beating at the edges. We hadn't gone anywhere. Eric threw his backpack down, cursing, then kicked at the dirt until the toe of his boot hit something hard. He knelt and brushed away leaves. A camera. Old. One of those instant ones that printed photos right away. It was half buried, coated in dried mud, but it still had film inside. He looked at me. "Think it works?" Before I could answer, Jess grabbed it and snapped a picture toward the trees. The shutter clicked, the photo slid out, colors slowly forming. When the image cleared, Jess dropped it. It was us, standing in that exact spot. But there was a fourth figure behind us, a blur of white and long hair, her face turned toward the camera. Eric swore and crushed the photo under his boot. "We're done. We're running until we hit a road." We ran again, the forest swallowing the sound of our footsteps. The trees all looked the same, pale birches, paper-thin bark curling like skin. My arms ached, my throat burned, and still there was no sign of an edge. Then Jess screamed. I turned and she was gone, just gone, 1 second beside me, the next, air. The forest around us looked the same, but her footprints stopped mid-stride. "Jess!" I yelled, spinning, my voice bouncing off the trees. No answer. Eric shouted too, running back the way we came, but the sound of our voices started echoing weird. Out of sync, like we were yelling into a tunnel. Then we heard her. Not close, not far either. A thin voice, high and panicked. "Help me!" We ran toward it, pushing through brush until we broke into another clearing, smaller, darker, like the trees had closed around it. Jess was standing there, her back was to us, arms limp at her sides. I called her name again, but she didn't move. Eric reached her first, grabbed her shoulder, and jerked back like he'd touched fire. Her skin was ice cold. When she turned around, her eyes looked wrong, clouded, empty, and her mouth opened in a small, trembling smile that wasn't hers. She whispered something. I leaned in to hear. "She says you can stay." Then the laughter started again, right next to my ear, all around us, overlapping like a chorus of the same child. Eric grabbed my arm and pulled me away, screaming Jess's name, but she didn't follow. She just watched, that thin smile still there, until the mist swallowed her completely. We ran. I don't remember how long. My lungs felt like they were bleeding by the time we collapsed beside a stream. Eric stared at the water. "She's gone." I nodded, but part of me didn't believe it. I could still hear the laughter, faint under the sound of running water. He looked at me after a while and said, "We're not getting out, are we?" I wanted to lie. I wanted to tell him yes. But then I saw something floating in the stream, a photo. I reached in and pulled it out. Dripping wet Jess again, smiling, standing by the same stream. Only this time, Eric wasn't in the picture anymore, just me. We never found the road. By dusk, the forest light had turned that sickly green-gray color that makes everything look underwater. Eric hadn't spoken in hours. He just kept glancing over his shoulder like he expected to see Jess walking after us. When we finally stopped, I realized we'd circled again. Same creek, same bent birch leaning over the bank. My stomach knotted. The photo of Jess, still damp, was gone from my pocket. Eric sat down hard, staring at his hands. "She's not gone," he said. "She's just with her." "With who?" He looked up at me. "The girl." I didn't answer. I couldn't, because I could feel it too, the air thickening, sound dying around us. The woods were listening. We decided to camp there. We didn't bother with the tent, just built a small fire and huddled close. I tried not to look at the trees, but every time the flame flickered, I saw shapes in the dark. Thin legs, pale faces between trunks. Gone when I blinked. After a while, Eric whispered, "Do you hear that?" At first, nothing. Then faint, like a music box from far away. A few warped notes repeating. He stood. "That's her. She had one of those, remember?" "In the story?" "Eric, don't..." But he was already walking toward the sound. I grabbed my flashlight and followed, the beam shaking over roots and wet leaves. The melody stopped. When I caught up, he was standing by a tree. There was another photo pinned to it. It was him. Eyes closed, head tilted slightly, that same faint bruise around the neck. He turned to me slowly. "She took it," he said. Something moved behind him, a blur of white between the birches. Before I could speak, the light hit his face. His eyes rolled back and he just folded. No scream, no sound. The forest swallowed him like he'd fallen through it. I dropped the flashlight. For a few seconds, I could only hear my heartbeat and the faint hum of static in the air. Then, out of the dark, a small voice said, "You can stay too." I ran. I don't even know in which direction. The ground sloped, trees blurred, branches tore at my arms. When I finally stopped, gasping, the forest opened around me, and there it was again. The clearing. The same one. The tents were gone now. The fire pit was just a hole full of water. But something stood in the middle. A Polaroid camera. Brand new. Sitting upright on a rock, waiting. I don't know why I touched it. Maybe I wanted proof, something to show I hadn't lost my mind. The second my fingers brushed it, the shutter clicked by itself. The photo slid out, colors bleeding fast. When it cleared, I saw myself, standing exactly where I was, camera in hand. Behind me, the little girl. Her smile wider, eyes darker. Her hand on my shoulder. I dropped the picture and ran until the world tilted sideways and I crashed through brush onto asphalt. The road. Real, solid, empty. I didn't look back. It's been 3 months. I don't talk about Birch Hollow anymore. The police found nothing. No trace of Eric or Jess, no sign of a campsite. They said I'd mixed up landmarks, gotten lost. Maybe hallucinated from dehydration. I tried to believe them. But then the photos started showing up. The first one was in my mailbox. A Polaroid of my house taken from the woods across the road. Then one tucked under my windshield wiper. Another slipped through my apartment door, always the same framing. Always me. And in the background, that small pale figure half hidden behind a tree. I threw them away at first, but they keep coming. Sometimes they're still warm, like they've just finished printing. The laughter comes and goes. I hear it most around midnight, thin and quick, echoing through the vents. Once half asleep, I heard footsteps in the hallway, bare. Wet pausing outside my door. This morning, I found a new photo taped to the bathroom mirror. It's me again. Asleep in my bed and next to me Jess, her eyes open. I don't go outside much now. The woods are only a few miles from here and sometimes I can smell them on the wind. Damp birch, cold moss, river mud. Last night, the laughter was closer. Not outside. Not in the vents. Inside the room. I turned on the light and saw small muddy prints on the floorboards leading to the window. The glass was fogged from the inside, and someone had drawn a crude circle with a stick figure inside. Underneath, A single word, stay. I wiped it away, but when I turned back, a new Polaroid was on the dresser. Fresh, it was blank at first. Then slowly shapes began to form. Trees, tents, me. And behind me, a small hand reaching out of the dark, fingers brushing my shoulder. The photo is still developing as I write this. The colors keep deepening, the shadows filling in more detail. I think when it's done, she'll be standing right next to me. The static started before we even got out of the car. It was faint. A soft hiss under the engine noise, like white noise bleeding through the speakers even though the radio was off. I thought it was just interference from the GPS. The others joked about it, but it didn't stop. Every few seconds, it spiked. A quick burst that made the air feel heavier. The kind of sound that makes you grit your teeth without realizing it. We were halfway up an old service road somewhere between Ash Creek and Willow Bend. Tracking coordinates that popped up on the geocaching app that morning. No username, no notes. Just a title, The Forest of Static. It sounded like an inside joke. I wish I'd left it there. There were 4 of us, me, Cam, the one who always brought expensive gear, Tessa, his girlfriend, into true crime podcasts and ghost stories, and Ryan, the quiet one, into maps, coordinates, and that eerie type of silence only he seemed comfortable in. Cam parked near the tree line and killed the engine. The static cut off instantly. We all looked at each other. Tessa laughed nervously. Well, that's not creepy at all. Cam smirked and popped the trunk. Probably just interference from the tower we're looking for. Come on, we're burning daylight. I stepped out and immediately felt it. That weird kind of quiet that doesn't sound like silence but pressure. Like something waiting. The air was cold and smelled faintly metallic, like after lightning. We followed the coordinates into the woods. The path was overgrown but not impassable. It wound between birches and pines that grew too close together, their trunks twisted like cables. Cam had his DSLR out, snapping photos. We'll post it on the geocache board, he said. Might go viral. Tessa rolled her eyes. Everything's viral with you, I didn't say much. The deeper we went, the more wrong the woods felt. The wind didn't move the branches. The shadows didn't sway. Even our voices seemed muted, like the trees were swallowing the sound before it could travel. Ryan stopped every few minutes to check his GPS. Signal keeps dropping, he muttered. But it's not random. It's like something's jamming it in waves. We hiked for about an hour before we heard it again. That hiss of static, faint but distinct. It wasn't coming from our phones this time. It was out there, drifting through the trees like fog. Tessa frowned. You guys hear that? Cam grinned. We're getting close. The sound grew louder as we walked. At first it seemed to come from all directions, then it started to pulse. A slow rhythm like breathing. When the trees thinned, we saw the tower. It was smaller than I'd imagined. Rusted, crooked, maybe 30 feet tall, rising out of a clearing choked with dead grass. There was an old chain-link fence around it, half collapsed, and a faded warning sign. Property of Welker Communications. Keep out. Cam climbed the fence immediately, of course. Come on, this is gold, I hesitated. There were cables running from the tower into the ground, vanishing into a patch of moss and dirt. The air buzzed faintly, enough that the hair on my arm stood up. Ryan crouched beside one of the cables. Still live, he said. I can feel the charge. Tessa kicked at the dirt. If it's still on, who's paying for it? Nobody answered. Cam fiddled with the tower's control box. The door creaked open, revealing a panel of dead meters, dusty switches, and one tiny red light blinking steadily. He grinned. Still breathing. The static roared for half a second, loud enough to make all of us flinch. Then it died again, fading to that low, steady hiss. That wasn't the wind, Tessa said quietly. Cam tapped his camera. Relax, probably a relay. These old towers pick up feedback when... Then his radio cracked. He always carried one. Walkie-talkie style, so we could stay in touch when splitting up. It was hanging from his backpack, volume turned low. Out of nowhere, it came to life. Shh, Kurt, shh. A voice broke through, garbled but unmistakable. Help! We all froze. Cam lifted it, turning the dial. Say again. Help me, please. The voice was shaky, panicked. But it wasn't random. It was human. It's stuck, it won't stop, Tessa whispered. Who is that? Cam frowned. Thumb hovering over the talk button. Probably someone messing with us. Old frequency, maybe a trucker? But Ryan shook his head. No, this isn't CB range, that's local. He pointed toward the tower. It's coming from there. I stepped closer to listen. The voice was faint, broken by static, but the more it spoke, the more familiar it sounded. It's dark. I can't. Get out. Tessa's eyes widened. Wait, that sounds like... She didn't finish because we all heard it at once. Cam. Cam dropped the radio. It hit the dirt and kept hissing, the voice still repeating fragments, looping back over itself like a recording chewing tape. Cam. It's dark. I can't get out. Cam. We stood there staring at the tower, the sound pulsing in waves like a heartbeat. Cam swallowed hard. That's not funny. No one was laughing. The signal faded again, replaced by that low white noise, only this time underneath it. You could hear something faint, breathing, shallow, wet, coming through every frequency. Ryan backed away slowly. We need to leave. Cam shook his head. Not until I figure out what's broadcasting this. He started toward the tower base, flashlight cutting through the dust. That's when the light flickered. Not just his, all of them. The static surged so loud it felt like a scream inside my skull. And for one split second, I swear I heard my own voice cutting through the noise, saying something I didn't understand. Then everything went silent, the kind of silence that hurts your ears, and the red light on the tower stopped blinking. When the red light stopped blinking, we all froze. No wind, no bugs, just that dead hum you get in a power outage, the kind that makes your chest feel hollow. Cam broke the silence first. Power probably cut off. He said it too loud, like he was trying to fill the air before the forest did. Tessa whispered, "Then why can I still hear it?" I listened. She was right. The static hadn't vanished. It had sunk under everything, low enough you could feel it more than hear it, like a pulse through the ground. Ryan crouched beside the tower base, hand hovering over the cable trench. Still vibrating, he muttered. Like it's alive. Cam aimed his flashlight at the metal rungs leading up the tower. I'm climbing. Maybe there's a relay stuck open. Cam, no, I said. We should go. Something's wrong with this place. He just smiled in that reckless way he always did. Exactly. That's why it's worth seeing. He started up. The metal groaned under his boots, flakes of rust dropping in dull clinks. His light bobbed through the fog, up and up, until he was just a silhouette against the sky. Tessa chewed her sleeve. He's going to fall. I didn't answer. I was watching the base of the tower because the dirt there kept shifting, like something moving underneath. Then the static surged again, louder this time, spilling out of Cam's radio, still lying in the grass. The voice returned, his voice clearer now, echoing from the speaker. It's me. Don't come up here, Tessa gasped. Cam, what the hell? He stopped climbing. What? He called down. Ryan picked up the radio and held it out. You're talking right now, listen. Cam's voice came again, overlapping his real one, only the tone was different, strained, desperate, like it was coming from miles away. Please. Don't, it's wrong up here, Cam froze. That's not, he swallowed. That's not me. The radio crackled once, then went silent. Cam's flashlight blinked 3 times and went out. Cam. Tessa screamed. We heard metal shift, then a sharp clang echoing down the tower. I aimed my light upward. Cam was gone. For a second, I thought he'd fallen, but there was no sound of impact, no broken branches, nothing. Just empty rungs glinting in the beam. Tessa ran to the base, looking around frantically. Cam, answer me! Ryan scanned the trees. He didn't fall.
He stopped.
His GPS was beeping in his hand. Signal's back, he said. But it's weird. The coordinates on the screen had changed. The numbers were counting down instead of fixing on a point, ticking lower and lower like a timer. 7, 5D400, 7, 53. I felt sick. Timer to what? Ryan shook his head. No idea. We grabbed our packs and started moving, calling Cam's name as we went. The forest was different now. The path we'd taken in was gone. Every direction looked the same. Even the air felt thicker, vibrating with that low static hum. After a few minutes, Tessa stopped walking. Do you hear that? It was faint at first, a voice filtering through the static, softer than before, like it was buried underwater. I'm fine. Tessa turned toward the sound. Cam? Follow the sound, the voice said. We did. God help me. We followed it. It led us through a narrow corridor of trees until we reached another clearing. A small, rusted building squatted there, one of those maintenance shacks half sunken into the ground. A single antenna jutted from the roof, humming quietly. The door was padlocked, but the lock was old. Ryan broke it with a rock. Inside smelled of dust and burned wiring. There were shelves of dead equipment, radios, cassette decks, a wall of switches labeled with faded call signs. Everything was dark except one small monitor glowing faint green. Tessa stepped closer. What is this? The monitor flickered, showing a grainy feed of the tower outside, same angle as if someone were filming from below. But there was movement on the screen, a figure climbing down. Cam. We spun around, expecting him to appear at the door, but no one came. When we looked back at the screen, the figure had stopped halfway down and was staring straight into the camera. It wasn't Cam. The face was wrong, blurred, features stretched sideways by static. But I swear it was wearing his jacket. Then the speaker on the desk crackled to life. Why did you come back? The voice was ours. All of ours. Layered together, slightly off-tempo, like someone had recorded us earlier and was playing it back through a filter. Tessa stumbled backward, knocking over a stack of tapes. We need to leave. Ryan slammed the monitor off, but the static didn't stop, it just switched source. My phone, his GPS, Tessa's camera, all of them buzzing at once. And underneath the noise, a faint rhythmic click like Morse code. I looked down. The countdown on Ryan's GPS had reached 0 Gauss. Everything went black. When I came to, the first thing I heard was breathing. Not mine, not close. Slow, mechanical, coming from the radio speaker beside my ear. Tessa was gone. Ryan was kneeling beside the open doorway, staring into the trees. She walked out, he said softly. Said she heard Cam calling. He looked at me, eyes wide, empty. She wasn't answering me anymore. She was just repeating. Repeating what? He swallowed hard. Her own voice. Outside, the static was louder again, swirling through the branches like wind. Somewhere in it, faintly, I thought I heard Tessa's laugh. We stayed in the shack until the light started to fade. Ryan sat with the GPS in his lap, muttering to himself about triangulation and feedback loops. I just listened to the hiss through the walls, thinking maybe if I could separate the layers, I'd understand what it was saying. When I finally stepped outside, the tower light was blinking again, steady red against the dark. A new sound joined the static then. A faint cry. Distant but sharp, it was Cam and he was calling my name. I should have run when I still knew which way was out. Instead, I followed the sound. Ryan begged me not to. He stayed in the shack, rocking in the corner with his hands over his ears. It's not him, he kept saying. It's not Cam, they copy the voice first. But hearing Cam out there calling my name over and over did something to my brain. It didn't sound like an echo. It sounded live. I stepped into the dark. The static followed me like fog, curling through the trees, thin and cold. My flashlight beam kept cutting out every few seconds like the batteries were breathing instead of dying. Cam, I called. Where are you? No answer. Only the hiss. Then softly, here. It came from ahead and a little to the left. I moved toward it, heart pounding. The sound grew louder, thicker, until it wasn't coming from a direction anymore. It was everywhere. I realized too late that I'd walked in a circle. The same trees, the same broken branch, my own footprints layered over themselves like loops on a tape, and underneath the static something new had started. Whispers. Not words exactly, more like fragments of breath being played backward. When I stopped walking, they stopped too. When I moved, they followed. I pressed record on my phone just to prove to myself I wasn't losing it. The second I did, the static doubled in volume. The phone vibrated so hard I dropped it. When I picked it up, the screen was black except for one line of text that shouldn't have been there. Listen closely. Then the speaker crackled, and my own voice came out. It's not him. They copy the voice first. It wasn't the voice from seconds ago, it was Ryan's voice from inside the shack. Word for word, I turned and ran. The forest changed as I moved. Trees where there hadn't been trees before. The air thicker, muffled, like I was underwater. My legs felt heavier with each step, like the ground was pulling me down. When I finally stumbled back into the clearing, the shack lights were flickering through the boards. Ryan was still inside, mumbling to himself, the GPS beeping beside him. "Ryan," I said, breathless. He didn't look up. "Ryan!" He turned slowly and I froze. His face was wrong, pale, stretched tight, lips trembling like he was listening to something through his skin. "It's inside the signal," he whispered. "It remembers what we say. Then it feeds it back." The GPS beeped faster. The display showed a new set of coordinates, repeating lines of numbers scrolling endlessly. "What's it pointing to?" I asked. He smiled, small and tired. "Home." Before I could stop him, he grabbed his pack and walked out. The forest swallowed him within seconds. The static went with him. I don't know how long I waited. Long enough for the monitor to power back on, faint green light blinking in the dark. A new feed appeared. Not the tower this time. The shack interior, from a different angle. From behind me, I spun around. Nothing there. But when I looked back, the feed had changed again. Closer now, zooming in on the back of my head. I killed the monitor and bolted. The air outside was electric, vibrating with sound. Every device I owned, phone, watch, even the flashlight, buzzed with the same frequency. The tower's red light blinked in sync with my heartbeat. Then the voices started. Cam's, Tessa's, Ryan's, all at once, layered and warped through static, repeating fragments of things they'd said earlier. "Don't come up here." She was repeating. "It's wrong up here." I covered my ears, but it didn't help. The sound wasn't around me, it was inside me. Then, between all the noise, a single clear line. "Turn it off." I looked at the tower. The light on the control box was glowing again, steady and red. I don't remember running to it, only grabbing the panel door, ripping wires, flipping every switch I could find. The air sparked, metal biting my fingers. The static shrieked. Then, silence. Not real silence, though. The kind that makes your head ring. The kind that feels like it's waiting for something to start again. That's when I heard footsteps behind me. "Ryan?" No answer. The footsteps came closer, slow and deliberate, until they stopped right beside my ear. I turned, light trembling in my hand. It was me. Not a reflection. Me. Standing there in the same clothes, same cuts on my hands, same everything. Except its face wasn't moving when it spoke. "You shouldn't have turned it off." The air split with a burst of static so loud I dropped the flashlight. When the light came back, it was gone, but my voice was still echoing around the clearing, repeating that same line again and again. "You shouldn't have turned it off. You shouldn't have turned it off." Each repetition quieter, like a tape fading. I made it back to the shack before dawn. The radio on the desk had switched itself back on. It was playing something new, a recording of my footsteps, my breathing, my voice muttering the words I'd just said minutes ago. The timestamps matched exactly. It was predicting me. I unplugged it, but the sound didn't stop. I could still hear it through the walls, through the trees, through my own chest. By morning, the signal was inside everything. The tower light blinked even in daylight, red bleeding through the fog. My phone battery, dead hours ago, glowed faintly in my pocket. Screen cracked, speaker whispering the same single phrase over and over. Signal received. That's when I understood what Ryan meant. It wasn't transmitting out, it was calling things in. And now that it had my voice, it didn't need the others anymore. I don't remember walking out of the forest. One minute I was sitting in the shack. The next I was on the roadside, knees bleeding, morning light too bright to look at. Cars passed, but no one stopped. The world felt a beat behind itself, like reality was buffering. My ears rang high and steady. The static hadn't gone away, it had just gone quiet. I told myself I'd made it out. I told myself that was enough. The first week back home, I slept with the radio on. I needed real sound, music, voices, something human. The noise helped drown out the ringing that never left my head. On the third night, around 3 a.m., the station cut out. A breath of white hiss slid through the speakers, soft at first, then rising like a tide. Then my phone lit up on the nightstand, screen blank except for 2 words. Signal received. I pulled the battery. The screen stayed on, days blurred. Work felt wrong. Computers froze when I touched them. Elevators hummed faintly, the same frequency as the tower. I started hearing words buried under air conditioning vents in the buzz of lights, in the pause between syllables on the phone. Sometimes it was Cam, sometimes Tessa, sometimes it was me. A coworker said I looked pale, asked if I was okay. Her voice glitched halfway through the sentence, stuttering like bad audio. When she blinked, her mouth kept moving, but the words came half a second late. I quit the next morning. I drove east, thinking maybe distance would help. By the second day, the car stereo died, but the hiss stayed, coming from somewhere behind the dashboard. Every time I passed under power lines, it swelled. At a rest stop, I bought a cheap handheld radio just to test a theory. I turned the dial through every frequency, all static, until 106.3 MHz. That one carried breathing. Shh. Then a voice, low and familiar. You turned it off. My hand shook so bad I dropped the radio. When it hit the ground, the speaker cracked and bled a single distorted laugh. The same laugh Tessa used when she was nervous. I left it there, still hissing on the concrete. Back home, I tried to record the sound to prove it existed. Each time I hit record, the mic filled with silence. When I played it back, my own voice answered before I spoke. Stop trying to capture it. I threw the phone in the sink and ran the water until the speakers drowned. But even through the faucet's rush, I could hear the faint, steady pulse of that hum. I stopped sleeping. The static lives in silence. If you keep noise going, TV, fans, anything, it stays thin. But silence invites it. And silence is everywhere once you start listening for it. Between heartbeats, in the space after a breath, under the hush of snow at night. It waits. Last night I heard someone outside my apartment door. Slow footsteps, then a soft scrape like a mic being dragged across fabric. I peered through the peephole and saw nothing, only the dark hallway. But my phone lying on the counter lit up again. A voice message from an unknown number. Length 000, no audio, but when I pressed play, the screen flashed white and the speaker whispered in my own tone, "Open the door." I didn't. Now the static is louder than ever. It hums in the walls, in the pipes, in my own bones. Sometimes I think it's syncing my heartbeat to the signal. Sometimes it misses a beat, and I can feel everything stop for half a second, like the world is buffering again. I tried smashing every electronic in the apartment. Didn't matter. The sound just moved through the floor, through the windows, through me. When I speak, I can hear the lag. My words come back a moment later, distorted. I started whispering just to see if it repeats that too. It does. Only now. The echo answers with things I haven't said yet. This morning, I woke to a faint light blinking red on my desk. The same shade as the tower. A small portable radio, one I don't own, was sitting there, clean, new antenna extended. The speaker hissed softly. "We found another one," it said. Not my voice. Not theirs. Something older, calmer, like a collective sigh threaded through wires. Then, "You brought it back with you." I tried to unplug it, but there was no cord. Just air. The red light blinked faster. Transmit. And I realized what it wanted. It wasn't a broadcast, it was a relay. The tower never sent the signal outward. It used people to carry it forward, voice to voice, ear to ear. A living circuit. I'm writing this from the motel outside Ash Creek. Windows open, everything powered off. Still, the static hums through the vents. It vibrates under my skin. I can feel the words shaping in my throat before I think them. They're not mine anymore. If you're reading this, maybe you can hear it too. The faint hiss under the electric lights. The click in your headphones between tracks. That's it listening. Don't try to tune it out. Don't try to find the right frequency, because the moment you do, signal received. I knew something was off the moment the forest went quiet. If you've hunted long enough, you recognize the difference between ordinary silence and wrong silence, the kind that feels thick, like the air itself is listening. We'd been tracking deer all afternoon. Me, my brother Luke, and our buddy Kyle. Late November, cold enough that your breath hung like smoke. The ground crunched under a thin frost and the last bit of daylight was dying behind the ridge. That's when Luke froze. "Did you see that?" he whispered. I followed his gaze toward the tree line. Just a wall of black pines stacked tight, shadows spilling between the trunks. "What?" I asked. He lifted his rifle, squinting through the scope. "Thought I saw eyes." "Probably a coyote," I said, even though I didn't believe it. Coyotes don't stand that still. We waited. 30 seconds, a minute. The air was so cold my hands started to ache. Then, there it was. 2 small lights reflecting from deep between the trees. Not bright like headlights, just dull gold glints, perfectly still. See it? Luke murmured. Yeah. Kyle leaned close. That's too high for a deer. It's like head height, the three of us stared. The longer I looked, the less sure I was that they were reflections at all. They didn't flicker when I shifted the flashlight beam. Didn't flash brighter or dimmer, they just were. Then Luke whispered, "It's blinking." And it was. Slowly, both lights dimmed and brightened together like eyes adjusting to the dark. We watched for maybe 2 minutes before Kyle decided he'd had enough. Probably someone camping, he said, forcing a laugh. Headlamp or something, but even he didn't sound convinced. Then why isn't it moving? I asked. He shrugged and started toward it. Well, let's go check. Luke grabbed his arm. Don't. I just want to see what it is. He took another step, and that's when the lights vanished. Not like something turned or moved, just gone. Like they were never there. We stood there for a long time, listening. Then from behind us, maybe 30 feet away, crunch. A single footstep on frozen leaves. Kyle swung around, flashlight cutting through the dark. Nothing there, another step. Closer this time? Luke, I whispered. You hear that? He nodded slow. The forest was breathing again, wind picking up, branches creaking. But underneath it, faint and steady, there was movement. Footsteps matching ours, stopping when we stopped. We started walking back toward camp, trying not to look like we were hurrying. The sound followed. By the time we reached the clearing where our tent sat, I could feel it watching us from the edge of the trees. I didn't have to see the eyes to know they were there. That night, none of us slept. I knew something was off the moment the forest went quiet. If you've hunted long enough, you recognize the difference between ordinary silence and wrong silence, the kind that feels thick, like the air itself is listening. We'd been tracking deer all afternoon. Me, my brother Luke, and our buddy Kyle. Late November, cold enough that your breath hung like smoke. The ground crunched under a thin frost and the last bit of daylight was dying behind the ridge. That's when Luke froze. Did you see that? He whispered. I followed his gaze toward the tree line. Just a wall of black pines stacked tight, shadows spilling between the trunks. What? I asked. He lifted his rifle, squinting through the scope. Thought I saw eyes. Probably a coyote, I said, even though I didn't believe it. Coyotes don't stand that still. We waited. 30 seconds, a minute. The air was so cold my hands started to ache. Then, there it was. 2 small lights reflecting from deep between the trees. Not bright like headlights, just dull gold glints, perfectly still. See it? Luke murmured. Yeah. Kyle leaned close. That's too high for a deer. It's like head height, the three of us stared. The longer I looked, the less sure I was that they were reflections at all. They didn't flicker when I shifted the flashlight beam. Didn't flash brighter or dimmer, they just were. Then Luke whispered, "It's blinking." And it was. Slowly, both lights dimmed and brightened together like eyes adjusting to the dark. We watched for maybe 2 minutes before Kyle decided he'd had enough. Probably someone camping, he said, forcing a laugh. Headlamp or something, but even he didn't sound convinced. Then why isn't it moving? I asked. He shrugged and started toward it. Well, let's go check. Luke grabbed his arm. Don't. I just want to see what it is. He took another step, and that's when the lights vanished. Not like something turned or moved, just gone. Like they were never there. We stood there for a long time, listening. Then from behind us, maybe 30 feet away, crunch. A single footstep on frozen leaves. Kyle swung around, flashlight cutting through the dark. Nothing there, another step. Closer this time? Luke, I whispered. You hear that? He nodded slow. The forest was breathing again, wind picking up, branches creaking. But underneath it, faint and steady, there was movement. Footsteps matching ours, stopping when we stopped. We started walking back toward camp, trying not to look like we were hurrying. The sound followed. By the time we reached the clearing where our tent sat, I could feel it watching us from the edge of the trees. I didn't have to see the eyes to know they were there. That night, none of us slept. By morning, we tried to laugh it off. Probably an owl, Luke said over coffee. You spooked yourself. But Kyle wasn't laughing. He'd been up since dawn, setting his trail cam near the tree line where we saw the eyes. He was into photography. Had one of those high-end motion sensor cameras that record video when something moves. Let's see what we're dealing with, he said. checking the SD card like it was Christmas morning. The first few clips were nothing, just us. Smoke from the fire, a squirrel darting past. Then he froze. Guys, he whispered. Look. He turned the screen toward us. The clip showed the clearing at night, our tents dimly lit, the forest behind them black and endless. Then slowly something stepped halfway out of the trees, just enough to catch the edge of the firelight. It wasn't a person. Not quite. It stood upright, but too still, too thin, like someone stretched wrong. The face was turned toward the camera, but there was nothing to focus on. Just those two eyes reflecting faint gold. And then, God help me, it smiled. Not a wide grin. Not monstrous, just a small, quiet smile, like it was pleased we'd noticed it. Then it turned, and as it did, the reflection vanished, leaving behind the shape of a head that wasn't glowing at all. Just dark. Luke muttered, Jesus Christ. Kyle deleted the clip. Right there. What the hell are you doing? I snapped. I don't want that thing on my card, he said. We're leaving. We packed up in silence, but as I bent to fold my tent, I noticed something in the dirt, a set of footprints circling the camp. Bare feet, human-sized. And there were 3 sets of ours. The 4th was smaller. It's been 3 months. I don't hunt anymore. I can't even look at the woods without feeling watched. Luke won't talk about it, but I know he sees them too. Sometimes he texts me in the middle of the night. It's outside again. It's not blinking anymore. Last week I finally worked up the nerve to check the old trail cam Kyle left in his truck. I don't know why I did it. Maybe I needed proof I'm not crazy. There were only 2 clips on the SD card. The first showed Kyle setting up the camera, grinning at it, walking away. The second was from after. The camera was lying sideways in the dirt, lens tilted toward the trees. A figure stepped into frame, crouched down, and picked it up. For a moment, I saw a face, Kyle's face. Blank expression, eyes dull, skin pale like the color had been drained out. He turned the camera around until it pointed toward the forest, toward something moving just out of focus. Then the footage cut out. Now, every night around 3 a.m., I hear it again. The slow crunch of footsteps outside my window, always stopping right before the motion light clicks on. Last night I looked through the blinds. At first I saw nothing but trees. Then a flicker of gold. 2 faint points reflecting light that wasn't there. They blinked, and behind them, deeper in the dark, I thought I saw more, dozens of eyes, lining the forest edge, perfectly still watching. When I checked the footage from my porch camera this morning, I nearly dropped the phone. The frame showed the empty yard, me standing in the window, but the reflection in the glass. There were eyes behind me, at human height, not glowing, just open,